Okay, welcome. Welcome to the PPM Attorney Capital Forum. I am your host, Darren Mangum, securities lawyer. I'm the managing partner of the law firm Mangum and Associates. We're a securities law firm practicing nationwide and internationally as well. I'm joining you from our Puerto Rico office today, and I'm glad they had the air conditioning. They were working on the air conditioning earlier this morning. It was pretty hot and toasty in this room, but thankfully they got it working again. So otherwise, I might be taking the shirt off, right? Anyway, thanks for joining, and today we're excited to delve into the world of social media. Raising capital. I think this is a very, very common question that comes up all the time. Many people have a similar question, can I use social media to generate interest in my deal or in my company, to attract investors? And the answer is yes, but with a big asterisk, big asterisk. It sort of depends, right? It depends on a couple different things. Depends upon the legal framework through which your offering is being offered to investors, right? The legal exemptions or registrations that you have put into place, right? So, backing up a little bit more, before you even think about attempting to use social media to raise capital, you want to definitely get good securities representation, a good securities lawyer on your team to help you make sure you're under the right exemption or under the right doing it the right way, under the whatever exemption that is applicable to the way you're offering it. And that's why I wanted to, this is obviously not specific legal advice, but this is general, we can go over the general scope of the law and the rules regarding social media use. And anyway, hopefully it's helpful. But like I said, when it comes down, devil's in the details on the use of social media. Now, certainly using it as and so we're going to go through that today, and as well as the different types of platforms, different where's likely to, and this is not meant to be. There's lots of different fluidity in social media and media in general, right? A lot of these rules apply not only to social media as we understand it today, but also just media in general. Like if you talk about traditional media, newspapers, television, radio, these same principles apply. Okay, so we're going to obviously focus on social media because that's what everybody uses nowadays. But it would be very much the same thing if you were putting an ad in the newspaper, a local newspaper, or doing a television commercial, or doing a radio spot. These same rules apply. So anyway, we're going to we need to first of all go over the legal. Let's go over the legal considerations that you need to consider before you engage in any kind of social media. And if the content, and I'll preface this with saying, if the content of your social media, what you're actually saying or what you're writing, if it's not necessarily geared, the language isn't geared toward actually getting an investor to express interest or soliciting the investor's interest, right? You're not piquing them with an opportunity or pitching them an opportunity. If all you're doing if all you're doing with social media, and whether it's like a video you're putting up on YouTube, or whether it's a post on Instagram or Facebook, if you're not overtly inviting the investor to contact you to invest, or if you're not pitching the investment, if all you're doing is talking about what you're doing, right? And in other words, you're sort of building credibility as a general rule, right? You're not making an overt offer or an implicit offer, right? Like, you could talk about everything you do and not say anything about investing, but maybe there's a little, politically speaking, who's not in favor of capital formation and growing companies and enabling people to raise capital, right? I mean, I don't want to deviate too much, but I mean the current SEC administration, the current SEC chairman, seems to be very much against innovation when it comes to raising capital. I mean, if the Jobs Act were being proposed today, I don't know. I think maybe it would have a challenge, right, to get approved, right? But this was an act of Congress. This was not an SEC created rule. In fact, the Jobs Act directed the SEC to create exemptions to go ahead, and it told the SEC, hey, we're Congress, we're telling you, SEC, create a safe harbor exemptions to allow for easier capital formations, for crowdfunding, for different things. And so as a result, what came out of the Jobs Act? That again allows for general solicitation. Regulation crowdfunding came about, and that's just been a really, by all measures, I think just a really fantastic innovation that has allowed for legal capital formation to really go forward, and now as it stands with all these regulation crowdfunding, crowdfunding portals that people can raise capital with, they can certainly, a lot of non-accredited people that traditionally would have been shut out of a traditional private placement because they're not accredited, or because they're not accredited or they don't have the amount of money. Now a lot of exemptions that said, hey, yeah, we can take up to 35 non-accredited investors, but you still have to put in $25,000-$50,000. We can only take so many, and so maybe the 35 investors are filled up, and so therefore now you can't participate. But Regulation Crowdfunding has done a great job in allowing non-accredited people to invest in deals that they otherwise would never get the opportunity for. CrowdStreet is a huge example of that. They had an article in the Wall Street Journal last week. It wasn't a really favorable article, but it definitely showed because again, not all deals, just because it's a regulation crowdfunding deal doesn't mean it's going to just make a ton of money, right? It's some deals are not good, right? But on the whole, though, and I saw an email from CrowdStreet that came out. I think it was in response to this Wall Street Journal article, and they talked about, hey, overall, investors make money with us, and anyway, but that's just a specific example for a regulation crowdfunding portal that obviously didn't exist before the Jobs Act, but now they've raised billions of dollars for real estate, allowing investors to get exposure to a lot of investment deals that they otherwise would be shut out of, right? So, but okay, as it relates to our discussion today, crowdfunding allows for public advertising, which includes social media, right? And the nice thing about regulation crowdfunding, or the nice thing about social media is that it's very much geared toward, short, basic information, like a regulation crowdfunding advertisement. Okay, regulation crowdfunding allows you to put out a limited amount of information that basically sets forth, hey, here's the name of the company or the name of the issuer, here's what we're offering, and here's a link that directs you to our crowdfunding portal that allows you to get all the details and all the information, right? And so when it comes to advertising a social media, advertising on social media, that's really what the most you can hope for, is just be able to do a really short post. And whether you do an Instagram post or a Twitter post, or it's not really geared well toward like video, right? Because the only thing allowed for the advertisement is just kind of like a tombstone ad that just sets forth the basic information about the offer, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the company can't also put out other videos like on YouTube that don't necessarily speak to the offer itself, right? But that because that would be outside the scope, right? Because regulation crowdfunding is very specific as to what you can post on any kind of media, right? A newspaper ad, social media ad, and it's very specific, like I just outlined. And so anything beyond that would possibly land you in trouble, right? So what do you do about a video, right? That's a super boring video if that's all you can post. That doesn't prevent the company, right, or the issuer of securities, right, that's raising capital. It doesn't prevent them from putting out other videos that really build their credibility and give a sense of not the investment itself, right, but it to talk about real estate in general, or talk about the company, right? In other words, it's general. It's not a solicitation, right? It's just general information, like a website, right? The company can have a website out there, and from the outside looking in, you really can't tell if they're selling an investment opportunity, right? There's no, hey, click here to invest, right? So when it comes to like a video, like on YouTube, the company can still put out general information type videos. They just can't, if they're under regulation crowdfunding, and this is specific to regulation crowdfunding, they can certainly put out general videos of a general nature, just talking about the company and who they are, without going to that last step of saying, hey, contact us to invest today, right? Now, they could, so anyway, that's how that sort of plays out in real life, right? How, if they're doing it right. It's funny because I get contacted all the time by clients who are like, hey, you told us we couldn't do this, but here so-and-so is a competitor of ours, and they're out there doing this all day long, right? And it's like, okay, well, let me take a deep look as to what exemptions that they've claimed, and you look, and I look, and hey, sure enough, they're from what I could see, they're outside the bounds of the law, right? They're just doing it anyway, and they're either ignoring their legal counsel or they're just not thinking about it. And so, it's like, hey, why does Billy get to, run down the street naked and his parents don't care? Why is that? I don't want to do that. It's like, well, Billy's parents are not, they're not really looking out for his best interest, and sooner or later, the cops are going to stop Billy and maybe get his parents are going to maybe take Billy away from his parents, because his parents are doing meth, and they're not paying attention to their kids, right, or something like that. Anyway, just because you see it on social media, doesn't mean that it's 100% they're doing it 100% legal, right? I mean, it's good to question it, but certainly, if they're doing it properly. And a lot of people just, they don't even think twice about it. They just jump on social media, they just do it, and they don't even think twice about it. And only later when they get in trouble, they're like, oh crap, all this social media stuff, they just didn't think twice about it. But so so when it comes to regulation crowdfunding specifically, you certainly have to know obviously what the rules are with regulation crowdfunding advertising, and make sure that you're following that, right? Now, the other, again, going back to the Jobs Act, the other big change that came out of the Jobs Act was the Rule 506C, which is very, very commonly used now, and that's geared, exclusively for accredited investors. Only accredited investors can invest under a 506C, which, in a lot of cases, that's all you want to be ideally dealing with anyway. It just depends on the deal, right? Maybe you just want lots of large check writers just to, write $100,000 checks, and you just need a handful of those to get the job done. That's certainly very doable under a 506C. The nice thing about 506C is that it doesn't require any, there's no cap on it, right? It doesn't cap out like regulation crowdfunding does. But the big plus about 506C is that it allows for general advertising, general solicitation, which is great for social media. Okay, so social media, so the nice thing about 506C is that it's not specific at all. It doesn't have those limitations that regulation crowdfunding does. When it comes to social media with Rule 506C, it's really wide open as long as what you're saying is true, and as long as it's directed toward accredited investors. It says, look, hey, this is available to accredited investors only. It doesn't matter that non-accredited people may see it, but you just make it clear, hey, this offer that we're asking for, hey, we're looking for investors. You can just you don't have to beat around the bush about it. You could just lay it out there and say, hey, we're looking for investors, and here's the deal terms, and this is available to accredited investors only. You could use YouTube, you could use Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those things, saying, hey, we're looking for investors, we're paying a 10% preferred return, we're investing in this real estate deal, or we got this cryptocurrency deal. It's like, hey, but make sure it only is available to accredited investors. You got to make sure that disclaimer is on there, and so it doesn't look like you're just making a public offer. Say, hey, look, you want to definitely have a 506C designation on your Form D with the SEC before you kick off a major campaign on social media. And also, you want to make sure any sort of whatever you're saying, whether it's a video, whether it's a post, has that disclaimer. This is for accredited investors only, right? But aside from that, you can just say, again, it has to be truthful. Can't be. I wouldn't. Just be careful. Don't go over the top and promise them the moon, right? Because again, if you put it out there on the internet, it stays out there forever, right? And you just don't want to overpromise, underdeliver, blah blah blah. But yeah, 506C is a great when it comes to general solicitation, public advertising. Really, there's no limitations at all on that kind of activity, right? You just want to make sure best practices to have those done. Now, I'm just going back to the outline. There's an outline that we have circulated, and also it's on this for the recorded version. And we're trying to get this outline out to everybody ahead of time. But if you're watching this on your own time later, you're following along. I'm at the third bullet point on page 1, identifying and targeting your potential investors. Where are investors likely to be hanging out, right? You have to think about that. Like, who's on Instagram, who's on TikTok, right? there are obviously demographics that are related. I mean, honestly, most of your accredited investors, they're not going to be in that demographic of TikTok, right? Where TikTok, most of the demographics are, millennials or younger, right? And a lot of them don't have a lot of money. So, to really put together like, hey, this is for accredited investors on TikTok, right? You're probably not going to get, I wouldn't ignore it, but it's certainly, it's not something that I wouldn't expect if I'm just doing a 506C offering to get a lot of traction, right? Now, if I'm doing a regulation crowdfunding offering, then and I'm allowing for smaller investors to come in, okay, well, then maybe that's a place where those type of investors, smaller investors that might hang out, or maybe they're your customers, right? If they're your customers, where are your customers hanging out, right? Online, what's the demographic there? Again, if you look at any of the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they all have their own unique kind of, as a general rule. I mean, I'm 53 years old, 54 now, actually. I lose track. And I'm on all those social media platforms myself. I'm an accredited investor myself. I'm on Instagram, not on Facebook very often, and I'm on YouTube a lot, right? So if I'm going to see some sort of investment opportunity, I'm probably going to see it on one of those platforms, primarily on Twitter as well, now called X. Elon changed it a few days ago. Also on LinkedIn, right? A lot of business people, professional investors, they may be on LinkedIn, and they may be checking LinkedIn more often than they would maybe TikTok, right? So again, looking at the demographic of your potential investor, right, you have to think, okay, what now if you're doing so you need to look at, where are those investors hanging out? Like I use the analogy of fishing all the time. Where are those fish hanging out? Are they, and so you're basically marketing just like you're marketing any other thing. What's the demographic of your customer? Same thing for investors, right? What is that demographic for that investor? And make sure that advertisement is tailored to that potential investor. And so I wouldn't, again, if I'm targeting large accredited investors, institutional investors, family office investors, people that can write $1 million checks, yeah, they might be on Instagram just as a, kind of as a social thing, but maybe not. Maybe you're advertising for some deal on Instagram, but your demographic is really they're hanging out all the time on LinkedIn or Twitter, right? Just because they're maybe an older crowd, right? Older potential investor, right? So anyway, I would certainly look at that as well. I think we talked about promotional messaging with informative content. Informative content, I would say if it's just informative, telling who you are, building that credibility, that's just as important. And you want to have a fair amount of that sort of thing going on social media anyway, in addition to, or as, in a lot of cases before you kick off some sort of advertisement campaign on social media, right? You want to build a following, blah, blah, blah. This isn't meant to be a class on social media advertising. I'm certainly no expert when it comes to that. Although I have to say, our law firm, once we decided to go on YouTube, and this is not for investment, this is just as a general rule, once we decided, hey, we're going to start posting on YouTube about 10 years ago, it really opened up our practice internationally, right? Because YouTube's such a ubiquitous forum, and so people started following us on YouTube, and And so we picked up lots of clients that way, right? But so it's no different from any other kind of advertising when it comes to investing. Where are those investors hanging out, right? Let's see. We talked about establishing a credible brand, blah blah blah, right? So again, when it comes to you certainly want to analyze the reach of your social media. All of that, right? So, so a lot of this we've covered. You definitely want to have, again, using social media not only to build credibility, but then actually to offer the investment. One question we get a lot is, hey, what if we want both accredited and non-accredited, right? And that's a great question, because obviously both regulation crowdfunding allows for public advertising like social media, and also Rule 506C allows for social media, right? So you definitely want to be careful of what you're leading out with. Some people, some clients, they've had a lot of success doing what we call a side-by-side offering, where you're offering both at the same time. You're offering a 506C offering, and at the same time you're offering a crowdfunding offering, right? So what I always tell clients is, hey, look, if you've got two offerings, and again, they're all coming to the same deal, everybody gets the same opportunity, you're just directing traffic. You definitely want to lead out with the 506C offering, right? Because it allows for more, just you can say more, right? You're not limited to just that little tombstone advertisement, the name of the issuer, the address, the type of security, and just a brief description. I mean, that's all that's allowed under regulation crowdfunding. You want to be able to do more than that, right? So I would always lead out with, again, 506C, hey, this is available to accredited investors, and that this is available, and you can talk about all about the investment opportunity, blah, 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 and that if you want more information, to contact you. And you could, again, use video. And then I would say that, hey, if you do get people that contact you that are not accredited investors, then then you just immediately direct them to the crowdfunding portal, right? You don't, and that way you can certainly, you weren't out there advertising for non-accredited people. You were advertising for accredited investors under 506C, and once you did find a non-accredited person, you directed them immediately through the portal. This side-by-side concept is a great way. That way you can take in really anybody, but you just got to make sure you're directing them through the right channel, right? They need to come in through the correct door. You can't, you can't just take a regulation or a non-accredited investor through regulation crowdfunding without directing them through a portal. It's just required by law, right? So just be careful with that. So that's something that this is the evolution of obviously, ever since the internet has become a thing. There's been obviously using social media to get the word out about investments has been a big thing, and really up until the Jobs Act was signed into law. It really had limited. You really could only do a limited number of things, So this is one question. We've got some questions here I want to field here. I've got here on the outline handling negative feedback, criticism, privacy, securities, common mistakes. Okay, maybe we want to talk about. We'll talk about some common mistakes, right? We already talked about, doing sort of advertising, the offering. One thing is people will say, well, look, if I'm going to, and also we should really. I know we've been talking about regulation crowdfunding. We've been talking about we talk about 506C, right? But in a 506B context or a private placement, certainly that what people get hung up with is they think, oh, well, I'm just going to advertise to all my friends, right? Like Rule 506B says, well, you have to have a pre-existing relationship with your investors, right? And they think, oh, well, how many? I have a pre-existing relationship with like 10,000 Facebook friends, right? And so I'll just blast it to them and all my friends, right? Well, that's really not going to work because a lot of those friends are not really. You don't really have it's not just a pre-existing relationship of any kind. It's a substantive issue, right? It's a substantive pre-existing relationship. Like, does it have any sort of weight to it? Just because somebody friends you on Facebook, it doesn't make them free game as a potential investor, right? You have to have some kind of substantive. I mean, if you knew them from high school, if you knew them from, some club that you're a member of, blah blah blah, then great. That's something that you could certainly reach out to them, and then even in that case, because of the sheer number of maybe those potential friends, you just don't want it to be construed as a public. Let's say I've got 1 million friends, right? Legitimate friends, right? That I've gotten to know over the years. Well, certainly that's something that is. Tell this client, I'm going to call them back. That's something that you don't want it to be construed as a public advertisement. So you'd want to communicate or message those people directly through you want to communicate them through one-on-one. One question is, well, hey, can I use Messenger to do it? Well, yeah, you'd want to message them laser focused specifically to them and not make it a big blast to the masses, right? If you want to keep those channels of communication open one-on-one, hey John, hey, by the way, we know each other through this. You want to refer back to that communication and any kind of refer back to that pre-existing relationship and any kind of initial communication, right? So you're establishing that. And if they say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't know you from Adam, then okay, maybe you don't, right? Maybe you just end it right there. But again, establish that relationship, because anything you're saying on social media, through a text message, through email, it's potentially going to be recorded, likely, just you have to presume that it's going to be recorded, and likely possibly could come out and be used against you someday, right? So you just want to be super careful about, we had a client that recently we had that was got into a ton of trouble because he was on all these different messaging boards. He was, and he actually created a bunch of different aliases that, made up a bunch of other weird names that he was referred to as, and anyway, just did all this communication and just really it was just went way over the top and promising everybody the moon and everybody's going to make $1 billion and just made all kinds of claims that weren't substantiated. And later we had to, we actually picked him up after the fact. We didn't. He had done all this stuff years before and later hired us to defend him against the SEC. And oh man, that was painful because there was not a lot we could defend him with, because it was certainly on there like, hey, here's, you're making all these false statements. It's under your name, under your account, and what was the basis by making any of these accounts? And he really couldn't answer any of that stuff. And in some cases we made him plead the Fifth Amendment, because it was like, okay, you've been way out of line, right? And so anyway, that's just a bad case, bad client all around, right? So we just, what you do the best you can, right? So but yeah, just again, those general principles like we talked about, you just definitely want to make sure, hey, in any kind of communication, is what I'm saying, what I'm communicating, is it within the guidelines or within the scope of the exemption that I'm operating under, right? And you got to answer that question. And And also, it's always a good idea to run it by counsel, right? Run it by your securities counsel, saying, hey, we're about to post this social media, we're about to kick off this advertisement. Can you take a look at it? And any seasoned securities lawyer is going to be able to look at it and give you good feedback. Hey, maybe you should tone this down, or maybe you should add this, definitely add this disclaimer on there, and or maybe you need to change that advertisement altogether, right? So, definitely I would run it by your securities counsel. Okay, just we'll have a few minutes here to cover some questions. Again, if I haven't covered your specific questions, you can certainly email me at forum@mangumlaw.net, and or Darren at mangumlaw.net. Either way, I'll definitely get it. And if there's anything we haven't covered that you'd like to see on any future episodes or future sessions, definitely let me know, and we'll cover those. But Dave here asks, hey, can I I've got an investment opportunity, can I ask my friends on Facebook if they're interested? Okay. Again, it's an investment opportunity. It's on social media, so it's a public, and the fact that your friends. Now, I mean, in that case, I would certainly, if you haven't put anything legal together yet, like you haven't done an SEC filing, you don't have a PPM, you're just sort of exploring it from the beginning and gauging some interest. Definitely don't post anything. Just reach out to them, pick up the phone and talk to them directly. Hey, I saw that there's this investment opportunity I'm thinking about doing, and maybe you might be interested. Don't blast it out to your 10,000 Facebook friends and say, hey, who's interested in this deal, right? Again, it all comes down to what's in the communication, right? Or if you're just sort of gauging general interest, right, then that might be, you might be able to get away with that. Hey, if I did this, if I did that, who might be interested? But even then, it's always going to be judged in hindsight. And if you're viewed as kind of conditioning the market, and again, a pre-offer is the same as an offer, right? You're saying, hey, if I do this, and are you guys all interested in investing? And you line everybody up, and then you go ahead and take their money. Well, again, it's all going to be looked at in hindsight as to, hey, did you generally solicit this investment? And in that case, in that scenario, the answer is probably going to be yes. And then it comes down to, hey, did you have a covering exemption? Did you do it under regulation crowdfunding, or did you do it under 506C, right? And again, if any of your investors are not accredited, then okay, you're going to be kind of in a bind if you can't fit within one of those covering exemptions, right? And so that's why it's super important, right? Just whenever you just look at social media, again, it's a very, very effective tool, not only to build credibility, but also to find investors, let them know about the opportunity. But again, you just want to make sure that you're doing it legally, 100% legal, because the downside is severe. If you don't, right? You don't. Nobody wants to get charged with securities fraud. Nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to have their deal blow up because they didn't do it right. So definitely get securities counsel to review your material, right? I'm going to go ahead and sign off right now. If we didn't, I've got a few people to call back, and anyway, if we can answer any specific questions for you in your particular deal when it comes to social media, or help you put together an offering that's 100% compliant, certainly we can help you through the law firm. Also, I think I've mentioned a few times before, we do have capital sources Marquee Equity is one of our preferred capital providers. They really have some great resources that could be a good fit. Just depends on, every deal is different. But yeah, if you'd like a specific introduction to them, please reach out, and we'll be glad to arrange a meeting or arrange a call. Or if you want an introduction to any kind of crowdfunding platforms, if you're looking at that, or broker dealers or different things. Again, if you're a client of the firm, then we're certainly happy to make those introductions as well. So anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate all the feedback, and yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And until then, we'll see you on the next forum. Thank you.